We're here with Phil Davis at University Square, Stratford. Phil, you started off in this very square in Stratford. You were given your first job by Jerry Raffle and started work at Theatre Royal Stratford East in 1972. How does it feel to come back here and see the regeneration of the area and sit today in the new UEL campus that will specialise in arts-related degree courses?
Well, it feels strange, I didn't recognise the square. I was looking out for the theatre. It's like one little sort of jewel in amongst this massive redevelopment. And when I was here, none of this was here. I mean, I don't know if it's any better, certainly not for the local community, but, it's a buzzing urban area now. When I was here, it was in a state of flux because they were just beginning to knock all the old houses down on Angel Lane, or just finishing it off, really, and starting the massive development of the area.
You've had a long and successful career working across theatre, film and television, picking projects that ensure you retain your integrity and creativity as an actor. What advice can you give to aspiring actors to remain resilient in a highly competitive industry and continue to chase their dreams despite setbacks and often not making any money?
Well, it's very difficult, and it's probably more difficult now than it was when I was starting out. Even though there's more television work around, there's less in the theatre. The producing theatres are not doing so many productions per year, and it is very difficult. I think one of the things that they should be saying to students at drama schools and on drama courses at universities is to go out and generate your own work. Don't just sit at home and wait for your agents to call or wait for someone to call you up and offer you a job. Make your own theatre. Theatre companies like the Théâtre de Complicité, they started off because they were frustrated with what was on offer, so they went away and found their own style. And if you can't find a play you want to do, get someone to write one. It's got to be good, of course it is. But, generate your own work, make your own thing. Don't just sit around at home waiting for the phone to ring.
You've done a lot of directing and writing. How did your acting work inform your directing work and vice versa? And is there one you enjoy more than the other?
Well, I started off just as an actor, and then I started to direct occasionally in the theatre. But then as I got into the 80s and into the early 90s, most of my work was on film and television. And I became very interested in the process, how these things are put together. I started to hang out in cutting rooms with directors I knew. And it seemed a natural progression for me. I'd written a play. The first thing I did was a play called Skullduggery, which we put on at the Old Red Lion, and I directed it myself. And I always felt there might be a film in it, and I wrote a screenplay. And I was very fortunate that the BBC picked it up, and suddenly, out of nowhere, I was directing a 90-minute film. And I was kind of learning on the job, I think my first love and last love will always be acting, the business of pretending to be someone else, trying to embody someone else. That was the first thing that I started out doing, the thing I love the most. But, the business of telling stories and making a kind of dent in the world is something that you can do when you make films and television programs, And it just seemed that the acting informed everything. The way I wanted to work with the actors is the way I work when I'm a director. So it's been a big learning curve, that learning how to direct. Although I don't do anything now, I haven't directed anything for 12 years. I've gone back to acting.
A high percentage of the students here come from non-traditional, cultural, diverse backgrounds. You've often said that you grew up in an ordinary working class background. What is it about being an East Londoner that has inspired you?
Well, I grew up here, not so far from here, out in Essex. And, to be perfectly honest, rather than an inspiration, it seemed at the time like a drawback. Really, because, when I was at school and I said to the teachers I wanted to be an actor, they just laughed, Kids from my estate didn't have successful careers in the theatre, It wasn't the done thing. And I had to sort of fight against a deal of prejudice because, I wasn't, tall, dark and handsome. And, I spoke with a squeaky kind of Cockney accent. And they said, how's this kid ever going to... But I knew that I could, if I was given an opportunity, make a good job of it. And I suppose it gave me a kind of steely resolve coming from what looked like on paper an unpromising background. But I had great support from my parents, although I didn't have a great deal of support from my school and school teachers. They weren't terribly encouraging. But it kind of armoured me against the world. I got used to people saying no to me, and I'd just keep knocking on the door.